So Alma Brooks is a Maliseet grandmother from St. Mary's First Nation in New Brunswick and a grandmother with the Wabanaki Confederacy. She was an elected band counselor for one term and then moved on to focus on traditional decision-making structures, including the Maliseet Grand Council and the Wabanaki Confederacy. Alma has developed and facilitated many programs for her community over the years and was acting president for the New Brunswick Native Council for 18 years. She is currently teaching a 2-year university course in the Maliseet language. Alma is a lifelong learner in the area of the environment, from her spiritual roots to the action on the front lines of many protests, demonstrations, and campaigns. Presently, she is also working to raise funds for the Wabanaki Environmental Defense Fund. The Wabanaki Confederacy, as was mentioned last night, includes members of the Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot peoples in Atlantic Canada. The Confederacy has invited Kairos, who's putting on this forum, to accompany them in their efforts to reestablish traditional forms of Indigenous governance in their territory, while actively working with local, national, and international partners to prevent ongoing and immediate threats to local lands and waters. Alma, just last week, a couple weeks ago, participated in the Gendered Impacts Indigenous Women and Resource Extraction Conference in Vancouver, and in the Honoring Indigenous Women's Wisdom delegation to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in May of 2014. So please join me in welcoming Alma. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about extractive industry and impacts on women, but I'm going to talk about a lot of other things too. In my own language, we call ourselves Wolustoqiyik, the people of the beautiful river. Indigenous to our homeland, which takes in the whole of the St. John River, including all of her tributaries, lakes, streams, brooks, and rivers, and forests, and all that is above the ground, and all that is below the ground. Lands and waters were gifted to us by our Creator, and we have never ill-treated that gift, nor have we surrendered our Indigenous title, nor have we ever ceded any trust or portion of them whatsoever to anyone. Our territory is called Wolustoqiyik in our language. All living things in our territory, like the birds, animals, insects, amphibians, reptiles, worms, and flies, and fish, and trees, and shrubs, and flowers, and all other plants, they also bear the names that were given to them in the language of the Wolustoqiyik. Our language comes from the land. Along the river, we had significant village sites along our sacred river. Menakwesk, Ajimsek, Walamukuduk, Ekpahak, Megdakwek, Matautik, Negotkuk, Kjimquispem, and so on. Council houses were built at certain places for gathering together to make the decisions for decision-making purposes. The Grand Council is the traditional decision-making structure, and it's based on our extended families or clans. The Wolustoqiyik are part of the great Wabanaki Confederacy of Nations, whose Algonquin languages are spoken in territories that extended throughout the eastern hemisphere of Turtle Island, or North America. We are the Eastern Wabanaki, established around 1680s, they believe, and for 400 years, the Wabanaki Confederacy has played a crucial role in the long struggle for Aboriginal rights. The Confederacy has more than a political, it was more than a political alliance, though, It represented a sacred bond of Algonquin brotherhood, a legacy which is relevant for the contemporary Wabanaki politics even to this day. And I have recently attended the 2015 Wabanaki Confederacy, which was hosted by the Abenaki people in the state of Vermont. And we held our conference on the shores of the beautiful Lake Champlain, on a piece of property that's owned by the Vanderbilts, and they graciously allowed us to use their property because the Abenaki don't have an inch of ground that they can call their own any longer. But in this Confederacy, a wampum belt was presented to the Confederacy bundle, and this wampum belt states that the Abenaki are a bridge between an alliance between the Wabanaki Confederacy and the Iroquois Confederacy. And so at this conference, there was a reuniting of allied forces between these two major confederacies. And so there's 5 wigwams on this side, which are the Eastern Wabanaki nations, and on this side were the 7 nations of Iroquois that have united together. And at the other end of each end of this wampum belt, the doors are left open for others to join. And so that was a significant thing that happened this year. So we are uniting our people across this country from coast to coast. A mother and her daughter hitchhiked across the country and stopped from place to place along the way, from British Columbia all the way to the East Coast. And they were calling on our people to unite. Our traditional stories tell us about a time of prehistoric animals, the Ice Age, the flooding of our homeland, and what caused the changing of the tides. Our stories explain the special spiritual relationship we have with our land, the earth, and all our relatives within this great creation. Our language is unique and distinct to our nation, and it can be found nowhere else in the world. Our traditional beliefs are rooted deeply in the land, and we were all given instructions about how to live on the earth. If we don't follow the spiritual laws of the universe, then she will take over. And I think we are beginning to see signs of that now. There will be no mercy, only the law. It is the earth that governs life here. All life comes from her, and we are totally dependent on her for our life. It is selfish and foolish to think otherwise. If we continue to disregard the laws of nature, the earth will bring about the balance herself. And it is our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren that will pay the price for our carelessness. From the very beginning, dated May the 2nd, 1887, Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, put it this way: "The great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and assimilate the Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they can be fit for the change." That's political and economic genocide. That was the order of the day. Peace and friendship treaties were signed and ratified over and over again. And we did not give our land away or surrender any of our Indigenous rights in those treaty negotiations. Our people have put up an extraordinary amount of resistance without breaking our promise of peace. And you only have to look at other countries and what is going on there to realize that we have kept the peace here. Our people have kept the peace. When you look at these countries in comparison, you see where people are fleeing for their lives. Yet, in spite of the Royal Proclamation of 1763, which outlawed the surveying and the taking of Indian lands without the consent of both the Crown and the Indian leaders, the English granted away millions of acres of our land. And in 1765, from the mouth of our river, our namesake, the beautiful river, entirely without our knowledge or consent. It was the Confederacy, it was the Wabanaki Confederacy that negotiated those treaties. In 1721, the Wabanaki presented the English with a formal letter addressed to the governor. And although I have brought it into the modern day English, I quote from one of our leaders. And I mean, this really touched me because it's relevant even today. You see, from the peace treaty of which I am sending you a copy, that you must live peacefully with me. Is it living peacefully with me to take my land away from me against my will? My land which I received from God alone? My land of which no king or foreign power has been allowed or is allowed to dispose against my will? Which you have been doing nonetheless for several years by establishing and fortifying yourself here against my wishes? Consider, great captain, that I have often told you to withdraw from my land, and that I am telling you so again for the last time. My land is not yours, either by right or by conquest or by grant or by purchase. The Wolastoqiyik, we see the destruction of the environment as a destruction of ourselves. We see that any assault on the good and well-being of our relations in the natural world, upon our lands and waters, as an act of destruction and aggression against us. Once again, in the year 2015, on behalf of my extended family and all my relations in the natural world, I say this to Canada. Our peace and friendship treaties are original. They are pre-Confederation treaties, and they are law. We have not broken our promise to you to keep the peace. Yet, is it living peacefully with me to allow the clear-cutting of our forests and allowing Irving to spray poisonous glyphosate on my land without my knowledge and permission? Is it living peacefully with me to dig an open-pit mine in the heart of my territory with a tailings pond laced with dangerous chemicals, or so dangerous that if there is a breach, it would destroy every chance of my relatives, the Atlantic salmon, to ever recover from their state of species at risk, all without my consent? Is it living peacefully with me to be selling behind my back the so-called Crown lands to settlers for fear of land claims without consulting me? This land is not yours. No matter what you do, the land you took does not belong to you, either by right or by conquest or by grant or by purchase. In 2015, the struggle is the same. Thanks to Kairos, we have partnered with Indigenous women from South America countries and beyond. I have heard atrocious stories of violence, of murder, of all kinds of abuses by extractive industries, especially from Canadian companies. If these companies are allowed to come into our territory, we can look forward to an increase in prostitution, an increase in alcohol and drugs above and beyond what's there already. People being targeted and going missing. We already have missing women. Local governments being corrupt, becoming more corrupt than they already are. We don't want multinational companies coming into our communities wanting to make friends with us. We are already dealing with an unsustainable society, a society that cannot sustain if they continue on the same path. There is no nice way to frack. There is no nice way to frack. The duty to consult is a meaningless process. It's kind of like the social license, where don't have to agree, as long as you get up there and say your voice is heard and all of that, but what changes? With a local disregard for the collective rights of my people. According to the Maliseet Charter of Rights and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and I say Section 35 of the Constitution, free, prior, and informed consent is required when there is an infringement on our collective rights. They are not communal rights, they are collective rights. There's a difference. Especially on unceded, unsurrendered lands and waters. Climate change, it is here. It's here now. It's not coming, it's here. The result of greed, of carelessness, of a gross disrespect for life in the natural world, of which we, the Wolastoqiyik, are a part. And I say, so are you. So are all peoples. Where are we going to go? We going to Mars or some other planet? That, maybe some will go there. Maybe Irving will go there. I don't know, but for the most of us, I don't think we'll go. I think we have to live here. We have formed, and this makes me feel good. I believe that the winds of change are happening. I think that things are going in another direction. I attended a conference the other day up at the University of New Brunswick, and for the first time, I've never heard what I heard there in that institution before. Any other time I've gone there, I go away feeling angry or frustrated or abused. But Dave Purley from the Micmac Maliseet Institute, he organized a treaty, a peace and friendship treaty relationship symposium. And the lineup of people that he had to speak were very encouraging. They were talking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the recommendations that were made. And one of the main recommendations was the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And that gave me some hope that there will be a future for our children. But we have to be mindful as we move forward through that. I believe that the winds of change are here. There is a shift. We have formed a Peace and Friendship Alliance. And with the Wabanaki peoples, and the allies from Canada and the United States and beyond. And we got the idea, I think, from a group south of the border called the Cowboys and Indians. And so we thought this was going to be, we got to really connect up with them, right? And the thing is that the Peace and Friendship Alliance, we have a mission. And our mission is concerned about corporate control of resources. And we are committed to protecting the land, the air, and the water. It's funny, you know, we're always fighting for protecting our land and water, but we always forget about the air. And yet, we could live longer without water and food than we could air, really. You know, and so, and we are taking united action for a healthy planet, for all our relatives, all our relations. We welcome allies to join this alliance in support of the mission. And we need the help of all people to move forward. We need your eyes, we need your ears, we need your voice, we need your expertise. We need to set the table this time. We need to make sure that the right people are going to be at the table, and that we base it and make sure that what we do and the difference in, when we move forward, that what has happened up till now will never happen again. And that we create a future that we can all be proud of, and our children can be proud of, and that everyone will benefit, including all living things, our relatives out there in the natural world. And we need to set that table for meaningful negotiations, not a sneaky behind the back room kind of things. It has to be in the open. Everyone has to feel as though they have a participating role to play. We need to follow the spiritual principles foundation. Lay that foundation. And the spiritual principles of honesty, caring, sharing, and respect. And so I invite everyone, to join the Peace and Friendship Alliance with the Wabanaki people as we move forward. There needs to be lots of discussions, lots of dialogue, and we need to think about very clearly what we're going to leave, because our tracks behind is what the tracks we leave behind is the life that we give to our children and our grandchildren. And with that in mind, we certainly all need to participate in the developing our future, that path. There we go. So with that, I'll say thank you and